All right. Well, hello. My name is Sammy. I'm a real estate agent in Los Angeles, California. And I recently learned a lot more about trusts and wills and creating your estate plan. And I know this is something that a lot of my clients who are buying houses and, are either couples or have kids or thinking about having kids or just otherwise want to protect their asset. Because if you own a house in California, you do actually have quite a bit of assets. And so Glenn and I work together. Glenn Yamada is from HG Estate Planning, and he was sharing a lot about trusts and estate plan and why why a will is not enough. And I was like, okay, I need Glenn to share a little bit about this, kind of the basics for somebody who doesn't know, just kind of the basics of what does an estate plan entail and what is it and who needs it. So yeah, Glenn, thanks so much, and go ahead, share what you guys share.
Thank you, Sammy. That's right, estate planning. So I think we live in a world of a lot of what ifs, right? What if I don't get into college? What if I don't get that job? And so the biggest what if, I think, might be what happens if you aren't there anymore? And this is a question that I help my clients answer. What if you suddenly pass away due to an accident or an illness? What if you're taken away suddenly, right? Unexpectedly. And it's certainly not a question that we like to think about, but it's a very important one to consider. And some people might say that facing your mortality is tempting fate, but I think when you understand that your time is limited, you gain a deeper understanding, a deeper appreciation for life. Okay. And also from a practical standpoint, if you do nothing to prepare for that day, the people that you love may struggle. Conflicts may arise between family members. We've seen plenty of movies where that's taken place. And I will tell you that that's something that has happened in my own family. I've had people that stop talking to one another because of a probate hearing. And so with no plan in place, also, the state has no choice but to take over and figure out what will happen to everything you left behind. Your children, if they're underage, they're going to go to guardians appointed by the judge. Your property will go to your family according to state law. And fair in the eyes of the state may not be fair to you or to your family. And so there's just really no way a judge will understand why somebody should get this property or that much money, because they don't have no clue. They have no clue about what your relationships were like. And on top of that, probate is a costly process. It's about 5% of your estate value. So let's say, for example, you have $1 million in your estate. Well, it's going to cost about $50,000 to go through probate. And that is a nice chunk of change, right? Something that you can buy a nice car with or go on a nice vacation on. And also probate is a very long process here in California. It's about 9 to 16 months. And during that time, people may not have access to your assets, right? They may need those assets to take care of your funeral expenses, do a number of things that are necessary to take care of things when you've passed away, right? But I think really the worst part of probate is the fact that it's public. And what that means is people can come into a probate hearing, your probate hearing, and listen to exactly who is getting how much and what, right? And if that is a problem, if, for example, it's your children and they're very young still, they're 18, for example. There are people out there, unfortunately, who would take advantage of that situation, knowing that your children have a lot of money or your beneficiaries have a lot of money. And so these are things that'll happen in probate. And so really, probate isn't something that we want our families to go through when we pass away. Okay. So the alternative, right, and this is where I come in, is to have a plan in place, an estate plan. And this plan directs where you want, what you want to have happen at your passing. You decide where your property goes and who your children should be with. Wills, trusts, power of attorneys, advanced healthcare directives, these are all tools to help you create these plans. And we see these big stacks of papers, these trust documents, will documents, and all this paperwork, and you think, oh, this is so much for me to handle. And what it really boils down to is, who do you trust, and who could take care of your loved ones? That is all that we're answering in these documents. And I think people make it very complicated, but essentially, if you answer these two questions, you've taken care of most of your estate plan. So, who do you trust to make decisions about you, your property, and family if you weren't there? And how do you want your property managed or given out after you're gone? Those are the questions that an estate plan answers. And really, that's all it really does. And you think it's more complicated than that, but it's not. It's very simple. So an estate plan tells the world, this is how I want my things to be handled after I pass. And these are the people that you need to listen to regarding me, my family, and my property when I'm not there mentally or physically. Okay. And so if all your property falls under a certain amount, you might be able to avoid formal probate even with a will. But if you have a house or significant assets, a trust may be a better option, because it takes the entire process out of probate and it makes it private. So the government doesn't step in. It's essentially a private process with people that handling your affairs for you after you passed away. So that really takes out a lot of time, expenses, the things that you would have to deal with in probate. And so you might ask, well, what is a trust, right? What is a living trust? Well, it's just an agreement between you and the trustee to handle your assets for the benefit of your beneficiaries, your children. And we can think of a trust like that. I don't know if when you were a kid, when I was a kid, I definitely had a box full of toys that I had, right? And I would put new toys in it, take old toys out of it. And, throughout my childhood, that box would get full or get empty, depending on, the season. And that's kind of what a trust is. It's the adult version of that red wagon that you had as a kid, right? And we would take this box, this wagon around wherever we go. And just like, and as adults, we take our trusts around wherever we go. And we put things in it, we take things out of it throughout our lifetime. And at the end, when we do pass away, we're handing that wagon over to the trustee to hand out all of our adult toys, I guess, to the beneficiaries that we have at that point, to who we want to have these assets and properties that we've accumulated over our lifetime. Okay, so that's what a trust is. Now, there are a few other documents that I kind of mentioned that are also important in an estate plan, and one is the power of attorney. And what is this? Well, this is I call this the "I got your back" document, because at some point in your life, you might need somebody to handle your financial affairs for you. And what do I mean by this? Well, let's say, for example, you're in a car accident and you're unconscious for a certain period of time, right? And enough, like weeks or months, potentially. And in those situations, if you haven't given anybody the authority to handle your affairs for you, well, it's going to make it very difficult for your family and for your business partners. And your business might suffer and your family might struggle because of this. And what this document does is it allows somebody to be in your place and to handle your financial affairs for you. And that means deal with bank accounts, handle financial transactions, make real estate purchases if that's necessary. Do all the things that you would have been able to do if you were conscious and able to do these things. Again, like the trustee, this is a very important power to have. And so the person that you appoint to have the power of attorney has to be somebody that you really do trust. But you do need to have somebody there to be able to handle your financial affairs for you, just in case. I can think of a number of examples where this was very important. And thank God the people that they actually had this document in place to allow other people to handle their affairs for them in the meantime. So that is the power of attorney. All right. And we also want to have, and I'm sure that everybody has heard of Advanced Healthcare Directive. Every time you go to the hospital, people probably ask about this. Do you have an Advanced Healthcare Directive? And so what is an advanced healthcare directive? Well, it essentially is a document, an instrument that records your wishes for medical care when you're no longer able to make decisions for yourself, right? And you can also appoint a healthcare agent to make these decisions for you. And so I like to use an example to illustrate the importance of this document. And for many of you, you may know or remember Terri Schiavo. And in 1990, she was 26 years old, and she had a heart attack. She never woke up from this heart attack. And so for 5 years after she had this heart attack, her husband tried to resuscitate her, provided as much medical care as he could in the hopes that she would eventually wake up. She did not wake up. And after that 5-year period, he felt she would not want to continue living in that state. And so he asked the doctor to remove life support from her. But before he could do that, her parents intervened and said, no, this is not what we want. This is not what she would want. And so thereafter, for 10 years, a protracted legal battle occurred between him and their parents, and also different politicians and a lot of other organizations in the country that advocated for one side or the other. And for 10 years, they were doing this. And in that time, Terri Schiavo was unconscious. So in 2005, she was finally allowed to pass away. But this is from 1990 to 2005. So for 15 years, Terri Schiavo was in a state of unconsciousness, living the way she did. And I think a lot of us would like to avoid that situation. And this is one of those ways we can do this. To have an advanced healthcare directive in place would avoid a situation like that, because we'll know what you wanted to have happen, right? Your wishes, your medical care wishes, despite the fact that you're not able to make those decisions for yourself. So this is a very important document to have as well. It's something that I would always advocate, I would always include in an estate plan, along with your trust, your will, and your power of attorney. So that is, in a nutshell, Sammy, what I have for you today. I hope that was enough to explain, give you the gist of what an estate plan is.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. I think that's really helpful because, I mean, I think a lot of people's entry point is a will, right? Like, oh, I need to get a will. I need to write my will, which first, most people don't even get around to doing that. But I think when I realized, well, a will is just like one piece of, 4 or 5 different documents that, all live in one little binder together, but they kind of speak to each other, and they more or less, I like how you shared that it's like, okay, well, who do I trust and who do I trust to kind of take over? And the documents just sort of name those people in different iterations. And it's all just, it's all just legal stuff. But it's actually surprisingly simple to put together and can avoid. I think the probate thing is probably the, freakiest part of it. Is like, we all know probate, it's like a bad word, right? And just the reality that it's pretty easy to avoid just by putting together some documents. And I don't think anything will ever be perfect. I mean, how can you possibly think ahead? Like, how do I want to, do I want someone to pull the plug on me, or what if this happens or that? But at least there's some, I mean, I don't think you can ever answer those questions completely, but at least you got a say before it just like goes out of your hands. One thing I did want to clarify is, you talked about the assets, and you said, let's say you have $1 million, and if you go to probate, that's going to cost $50,000 just for like the legal fees. And I think some people watching this might be like, well, I don't have $1 million, like whatever. But can you clarify that how that $1 million is calculated, especially for somebody who owns a house, because that's, the folks we're speaking to.
So that would include the value of your house. So even if you have equity in your house, so let's say, for example, you it's a mortgage and you still have half of the amount to pay off. Well, they're not going to look at that. They're going to look at the actual value of the house at the time. And so, 5% would mean 5% of the value of your gross value of the estate at the time. And that could be significant, even though, the equity that you have in the house may not be, for example, the entire amount, because a lot of us haven't, paid off everything. And in those situations, unfortunately, the probate court's not going to look at it that way. They're going to look at the value of the house itself. So, it's unfortunate, but these are the reasons why we avoid probate, because we don't want them to take care of things for us when we are passed away. The great thing with the trust is it's all private. We're not dealing with a court here. We're not dealing with a judge. We're dealing with somebody that we trust to take care of things for us when we pass away. And I think that's really the biggest value of having a trust, because you don't want to put your life in the hands, or your afterlife, I guess, in some ways, in the hands of somebody that you have no idea. You don't know this judge, you don't know the court, you don't know all these administrators that are handling your business, right?
Totally.
So
and
that's
it's talking. I mean, the gross value is like, if you buy your house 5 years ago, for 700, now it's worth like 1.2. It's all your retirement accounts, your 401k, it's your bank account. Like, you might not have $1 million in the bank, but like, they're going to look at your whole thing and say, oh, this is worth that much. And then, I mean, sometimes that could clean out all your cash, basically, if they're taking 5% of the whole thing. Then you don't even, then that forces you into a situation where like maybe you have to sell your house to pay off debts and versus like letting your beneficiaries or whoever you wanted to keep that. Because ideally, if you're buying a house, hopefully you're thinking like, hey, I might want to pass this on to folks one day, not like, oh, I passed away and now everybody has to sell off everything or try to scramble to figure out how to pay for it.
Yeah, I mean, so 50,000, the 5% is a rough estimate. It could be a little bit more, a little bit less than that, but generally speaking, that's what it usually comes out to be.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, there's that aspect of it. I mean, if you have no plan in place, it's just really up to the judge in terms of how things will go. Obviously, laws will determine who should get what, but I don't know. I feel like nobody wants that situation, and people are going to argue, I deserve this. I did more for my family than my brother, my sister did, and you can imagine the scenarios that happen, right, in that situation. So
totally,
it just becomes very I don't know. There's just conflict and people arguing over a lot of things when you go through probate.
And speaking of planning, like at least planning it, how do you, I mean, I imagine you can make the trust once, but let's say you're like in your 30s or 40s and you don't really know what's going to happen. I mean, how often can you change the trust? Like, oh, what if you had a kid, or what if you want to take somebody out of your will, or you want to add people? Like, how do you change it?
Well, there's amendments. You can do amendments for smaller changes. So, if we're talking about, changing your trustees, because I think a lot of people, we'll pick people that we know at the time and that we have a close relationship. But obviously, over time, those people might change. And so in situations like that, you could easily do an amendment that replaces the trustees and
so you
other
can,
people, for example.
You're not stuck. Like, I mean, you can change it as you go. Yeah.
You're not, yeah.
Yeah, because it's hard to think like that far ahead. I mean, obviously we would hope that we wouldn't do the trust and then like pass away 2 days later, but like theoretically we're planning for something like very far in the future. And it is hard to kind of wrap your head around like, what's the scenario going to be then?
Yeah, and I think we want to make sure that we have something in place now. And so what I say to people is that just have something in place that would work tomorrow. At least have that in place. So don't always overthink about like who's going to be the trustee 20 years from now. Like, is he going to be I would look at it that way, because unfortunately a lot of attorneys might just do the trust for you and then kind of leave it and never get back to you. And so problem with that is, and seen this, in many instances, is, people come to me with a 20-year-old trusts that obviously are outdated at that point, because the people that they've chosen to be trustees or these other positions, they're not there anymore. They're not in their lives. So it does. After 20 years, things are going to change, right?
Right.
Undoubtedly.
But
So
you can amend it, and you can kind of, I mean, and yeah, that's a good point. Like, you don't have to think 20, 30, 40 years out. It's like, okay, if this happens tomorrow, which obviously, hopefully not, this works for now, and then check in periodically, maybe sooner than 20 years. And like, I think you said every 3 years.
Oh, wait, 20 years.
Hey, is everybody still? Is everybody still here? Is everybody?
Yeah. That's a good point, Sammy. But I think obviously, it's your responsibility to make sure that your trust is up to date. But I think if your attorney checks in with you every so often, that's a good idea. And I feel like if you're an estate planning attorney, that's an obligation on your end to at least check in to make sure that nothing has changed within a few years.
So if you have a will, but you don't have a trust, but you've already written, like, in my will, this is who I want to take care of my kids, this is who gets my house, my car, whatever.
Yeah.
That still goes to probate if you have a will and you don't have a trust.
Yes. So it depends on how much is in your estate. So if we have,
Okay.
if you're at least as of this year, I believe it's about $166,000. If your estate falls under that threshold, then you do not have to go through formal probate. So this is why, it just depends. And most people, if you have a house in California,
I mean, you probably
probably not going to
probably over that threshold already.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, basically, yes, you could with a will avoid probate if it's under a certain threshold, but pretty much if you own property in California, you're pretty much guaranteed to go through probate, even if you've written a will, but you didn't do these other documents.
That's correct.
Okay. I mean, I'll leave it at that. I'm just going to leave it at that because, as a realtor, obviously most of the folks that I, am connected to professionally are either bought a house or about to buy a house. And so to me, that was like a big, I didn't know about that. I just was like, oh, I need to do a will. Obviously, I had never even gotten around to doing the will, but I was like, oh yeah, I'm going to go online and like make a will. But then I think when I heard that piece, I was like, well, that doesn't even actually solve the issue. And I've had a really great experience, connecting with you, Glenn. So just wanted to, share that out. And how can people get in touch with you if they want to learn more?
Well, they can reach out to me via email. I have a website, hgesstateplanning.com. Please reach out to me there. I have a phone number there. You can call me as well. So please let me know if you need any assistance with your estate planning. I'm more than happy to help you.
Awesome. I'll put that information too in the text.
Last slide.
Cool. Oh yeah, there you go.
That's the wrong address, actually. Sorry about that.
I'll put your email in. But Glenn, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I do feel like it kind of blew my mind when I learned about this, and I just wanted you to be able to share that a little bit with folks. And yeah, reach out if you're watching this. Reach out if you have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sammy. Bye, everyone.